This video is going to show you how you can add gradients to your shapes instead of a solid color. So to start with, let's get a shape going. I'm just going to go ahead and do a rectangle just to demonstrate. And if you notice, over on the tool panel, there are two color swatches. One is for the fill and one is for the stroke. And right now I have that set to black and black, right? So I can change that by clicking on it, to change the color. I can choose the hue I want, and then I can choose what lightness or darkness I want in there. So I pick, let's say I want something blue. I can make it more blue and say OK. And so that's just a solid color. Now, if I'd like it to be a gradient, notice below those swatches there are options. There's the solid color, the middle is the gradient, and then on the right there is none. So if I wanted it to be empty, I could click on that. But let's make it a gradient by clicking in the middle. So it sets it up to be a gradient, and notice there is a gradient panel, and it just by default starts out being grayscale. So if I want to change the color of those, notice there's a gradient slider. I can double click on that and choose a color swatch I would like. There's also a more of a color range, but then I would need to make it go over here. I need to change it to RGB first. So I can do that, and then I can pick exact color, or sometimes it's easier just to pick a general color swatch. So let's go from, how about red to yellow. So I'm going to pick, my first color is red, and then I see this is the final color. Notice that aligns with this. I can click on this black dot, and let's say I would like it to go to yellow. So now I have a red to yellow gradient. Now I can add other things in between and have it transition. So this is probably going to look a little ugly. I'm going to go ahead and just click there, and I can pick a color for it to be in between. So how about, let's make it go to green. Now the red to green is going to look pretty lousy, but we'll give that a try. So I'm going to go with green, and the green to yellow looks okay. This just looks kind of gross. So in fact, let's change this first color maybe to blue, and it'll be a little like nicer transition there over to that. Now, so those are our three colors, and notice these dots on the top can control where the transition midpoint is. So if I wanted it to be way more green, I can move this over there, and notice it shows up in my object as well. Typically, I think you can usually do most things just with a simple default. Now in the end, let's say I really didn't want this mid color. I think it's naturally going to happen from blue to yellow. I can just click this and I can just drag it away from my bar. Notice at the top there's also options for type. So this is a linear gradient, and with that I can choose what direction it's going in. Notice over on the toolbar there's a gradient tool, and that allows you to choose what direction that gradient's going in. So right now it's going horizontal. If I'd like it to go on a diagonal, all I do is I click and drag, and it changes the way the gradient's going to go. So I could go up this way. The longer the bar, the more smooth of a gradient. The shorter, it makes it a quicker transition. This is kind of a gross color. Let's switch this maybe to red to make it a little more fire-like. Another type of gradient we can do is a radial gradient. And to get that working, you just make sure your object is selected, and then click on this middle radial gradient button, and then we have that. And we can control how the gradient looks mostly by where this midpoint looks. And also the gradient tool. Now right now it's starting from the middle, but if I wanted it to be offset, we could do that. And so that's generally how that works. Now there's a new gradient here that honestly I have not worked with very much, but it looks kind of cool. I'm going to click on that. It's a freeform gradient, and it looks like I can put different, I have this set to points. I can add points, and it changes the look. Looks like lines. Let's see what that looks like. Interesting. So that may be something if you want to experiment with, you can. I actually don't have much information to share with you on that. But like the linear and the radial are pretty more direct. Freeform might be kind of fun to play around with. I also wanted to point out, let's say I wanted my whole background to be a gradient. Unfortunately, this isn't like Photoshop where I could just dump a gradient in. What I need to do is actually make a shape. So I'm going to take a rectangle and make it the full size of my image. And then I can go ahead and make it a gradient. So if I wanted a background for something with a gradient, that's how you would do it. And so those are some basics of using gradients in Illustrator.